which is incredible. So, Jeremy, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me today, Christina.
Yeah, and if you don't know Jeremy yet, he's going to share a bit more about himself. But maybe if you don't know Jeremy, you might have seen one of the maps he is creating, for instance, about the United States. Yesterday, for instance, Jeremy, I saw you posting on Substack Notes something about marriages in China that apparently no one is interested in getting married anymore. I also saw another one about yeah kids dying in America. Apparently America is not the country to raise kids. But Jeremy, before we're gonna dive into all of this and also about your newsletter that is all about inequality in America and also all around the world, who are you and what is your Substack newsletter, and why do you think so many people, now more than 20,000, are already readers of your Substack newsletter?
Yeah, so a bit of background on me. I am a professor at Columbia. I write the Substack American Inequality. I am the author of a forthcoming book titled Opportunity Map, really about inequality and opportunity in the US through the lens of communities, stories, and solutions. And I live in Brooklyn, New York, with my wife and my son. And yeah, I've been writing on Substack a little over 5 years now, which has been great, kind of continuing to, share new pieces really about, regional divides and kind of covering the big five issues of inequality: housing, unemployment, income, healthcare, and education. And I think the maps, like, yeah, people love the maps. They love, they know where they were born, where their parents live, where they went to college, and being able to like drill down into those different areas and understand, why this, certain place in, Tennessee is doing so much worse than this area in North Carolina, like really helps draw out a lot of these interesting and place-based stories.
Yeah, and the thing about your book deal, this was the interesting part really, is that at the moment so many, and this is not new in 2026, this was already like a thing in 2024 and before that, the publishers, they started to tell the authors, they say, hey, if you want to sell or keep selling your book, then the thing you need to do is to be on Substack. And I think now with Gary Vee and all the other bigger people, getting on Substack, yeah, Substack is not just like the buzzy platform anymore, like the new kid on the block. It's really becoming more like mainstream, and more people gonna join. And what you did, I think, is something very special, because you started writing on Substack, but you had already like some vision in mind, and you didn't stop, although you had to overcome so many obstacles. Maybe you can share a bit more. When did you start, and how did this help you to get this book deal?
Yeah, so I started writing on Substack in 2021 when I realized that I was sitting on sort of all of these interesting like maps and data sets and stories, kind of interesting things going on in kind of communities across the US. And I had a good friend. I was kind of working on a nonprofit with a friend who had a Substack at the time and kind of encouraged me to, get on board. And so these were some of the like early days of Substack. I'd been writing a little bit on Medium at the time. And it was really nice, like in that, early days of just that strong community of writers. There were also, kind of over the following years, all of these, media and newspaper layoffs that continued to bring more and more folks on board. And so got to meet a lot of, great journalists. And I think that, work and kind of really focusing on this topic of inequality, there weren't just, that many writers at that time who were specifically kind of drilling into this issue. And I think that really, helped resonate with some folks. But yeah, now you see all these authors who like right when they launch their book or a month before they launch their book, they like create their Substack. And in some ways they like haven't really built an audience, built that trust, like kind of help people establish that voice. And I think growing it over that time helped me kind of like carve out this area such that when I thought about pitching this book idea in the world, I had all of this evidence of readers and topics and things that I knew resonated with people, what did work, what didn't work. And so that really helped through the, acquiring an agent, going through the proposal, and then like pitching the, kind of like big five publishing houses in New York.
Yeah, this is crazy good that you're now gonna be a debut author with Hachette. And the thing is, you said in the beginning, like you were sitting on these maps and these data sets, and I think there are so many people sitting on their skills, on their whatever, like what they have, like their memoir or so, and they are thinking about whether they should join or not. And I think you are a great example. You started in 2021, and now it's 2026, and you have more than 20,000 subscribers. And as far as I understood, you really started this from rock bottom. You didn't like you couldn't take an email list from somewhere else, right? So it was really like starting from rock bottom then.
Totally. I mean, for the first probably 2, maybe even 3 years, like, I was really just writing for, like, friends and family, it was like, my mom was, like, one of my biggest commenters on, like, on my posts, and, good on her for for kinda giving the encouragement and then seeing it, continue to grow and sort of those, like, small areas of traction that really built on each other. And it's interesting, like, after I, published a guest post, on your Substack, how many authors kind of reached out saying that similar narrative of like, I'm sitting on something, I'm kicking around this idea. Like, how do you kind of like make that, kind of transition? And I think you're totally right that a lot of people are using Substack as that like laboratory to figure out what resonates and what doesn't.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the from a marketing perspective, it's really like interesting that somehow you could really say, especially in America, of course, here in Europe, in the UK, it is a big thing, Substack, but in Germany, for instance, whenever I'm talking about Substack, they're like, "Oh, yeah," maybe they've heard about it, but still they're
Oh,
like
interesting.
also like, like this, like when it comes to email lists, they are not so sure whether they should do it. They are still like on this follow, they are still, yeah, chasing followers. Let's call it like this. This is how it is in Germany. But I think now that Substack, especially in America, is really becoming yeah, somehow a tool for everyone, not just authors, indie authors, and so on, but like for everyone, like for brands and for celebrities, because they know this should be also part of their social media strategy. So, for instance, in the past, you know what I mean? Like there were Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, maybe Medium, whatever, but there were no one talking about Substack, and now suddenly there is Substack. So we had some questions here in the chat. So, for instance, I think one of the reasons why you are on Substack and why you started this in 2021 is also the community aspect of this, right? Because you knew that you wouldn't be creating in a silo, you would also somehow create in a community space, more open community space. However, in 2021, Substack wasn't the platform it is now because now we have chat and we have direct messages, we have this live where we can collaborate. But I think back then in 2021, when you're looking back, how did Substack change over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think beyond the features, yeah, that kind of ability to build community has very much so changed. I think I talked a bit about like the recommendations part. I think was really helpful not only for like finding other authors like in this econ policy space, but also I think for helping like encourage and like help these other writers who are and also to like help me kind of like strengthen you know um our readership, people who are like interested in similar things. Um, there are also now like these massive, publications on here, the argument, the bulwark. Like, I got an email last week from the bulwark saying they just passed 1 million Substack subscribers, which was,
Crazy.
kind of like hard to even fathom. Um, yeah, I think, some of these like, yeah, the chats, the live video. I mean, for me, it took me actually a long time to even come to live video because my writing is so visual, like, and people like to drill into the maps and stuff. And so I wasn't so sure that this format would work well for my readers. But I think it's now like tapped into this other set, right? We have 24,000, email subscribers now and like 50,000 weekly readers. And they are interested in different things. Like I get messages saying, "Oh, people listen to the recording now on their commute to work, when they're driving in their car. And when you're driving, you can't like drill into a map." And so being able to have these different, form factors has been quite nice. And notes as well has also been one of those helpful things for kind of like helping people find the content in other ways. I think in part because, yeah, the articles themselves go in pretty in depth, into these topics. They're usually like, anywhere between 1,000 to 1,400 words. And so notes being one of these fun ways to just share out this interesting, charts or map, like a few of the ones that you had already mentioned.
Yeah, and when we're checking out American inequality, what we can see, of course, are all these maps. And as you said, like this visual part is very important, not only when it comes to like the branding of your publication, that is your newsletter, but also when it comes to your post. This is, for instance, here a paid post I'm sharing. Let me put it here. But maybe we can take another one. For instance, why does inequality matter? This is somehow also your, let's say, start here post, which people can then check out. And there you can see what Jeremy is doing, that he's often going with these charts and these maps. Similar to, where did I saw this week, like the petition as an example. These are writing as anonymous authors, and they are also going with lots of graphs and stuff, which I always think is the best, and people are gonna love it if you're gonna take like all the data and then turning these data into like in charts they can actually check out. Also, when we're gonna see here with your notes feed, that you're also often going to go with charts, with visuals and stuff, right? So this is somehow your unique selling proposition there, I think, because when I'm seeing you on notes, then it's most of the time, this is the one with the Chinese marriage rate
Yeah.
have fallen to record lows. So you could write about this, but you can also take this chart and share it, which is yeah, quite impressive, I'd say. I don't know where this peak was coming from, and then when was it, like 2013 or so. And
Yeah.
then apparently since 2030, no one wants to get engaged anymore in China. So yeah, so I think where does this passion for visualizing data is coming from? Because there are also other writers, more techie writers, so you know what I mean? Like they are talking, or writing, but the visualization is missing. But I think with yours, it's the visualization, then you're adding your 2 cents to it, and then like helping people understand the world better.
Yeah, for me, a lot of this work actually emerged from my time at the Federal Reserve. So I spent several years there, kind of on one of these post 2008 crisis teams, and part of what I realized was there's almost like that West Wing type of moment that happens like with very senior people at the Fed where they don't have a lot of time. They're balancing all of these complex issues. And so you only have that like split second sort of in the hallway as they're going between meetings to kind of catch them and, talk to them about a certain issue. And visualizations are a really powerful way to get someone to very quickly understand, like, oh my goodness, there's this crazy change that has happened in Chinese marriage rates. Like, oh my goodness, life expectancy, in these, southern states appears to be so different than, elsewhere. Like, we see these tremendous outliers when it comes to, how much money we're spending on healthcare versus, outcomes that, economic mobility outcomes that we're seeing. And so, like, if you just present a table or a bunch of numbers, like, it's hard to make sense. Humans are very much so visual learners. And so I think that ability to try to help people make sense of the world, make sense of the world quickly, like, really helped me really think about the importance of data and data visualization. So I think number one is just like time. I think number two is, in this very polarized world that we live in, data can sometimes be a nice way for us to talk about really difficult topics. So, like, we can say, like, this is the number of, homeless people in America as reported by HUD. And we can say, like, does that match what we think is going on in the world? Does that number seem low? Does it seem high? What should we do about it? But having something in the center that we can all look at can allow us to start debating that issue. And so I also felt like it opened up a lot of conversations. And I think three is high quality content does really well on Substack too, and beyond Substack. Like, people are drawn to people who, kind of continue to us like produce good, authentic work that is novel, that is something exciting for them. And so high quality content often shows up like in these maps, in these visualizations that we build. And I think that really, resonates for folks. And also just like the maps do really well online. Like, they often go viral. People love to send them around. They like send it to their buddy being like, hey, it looks like you live in this crap area. Like, come move to, where I live, like that type of thing. And so I think that ability for like just visual, assets and people to send around, I think is also, part of the impetus to continue to, kind of present those to folks.
Mm. And it's not easy to present these data to us, to your audience. How do you do this? So where do you find the data and how do you visualize this? And how long does it take to go from like whatever, like finding the data to visualizing this and then yeah, pumping this out on your Substack?
Yeah, I'd say 90% of the data comes from like large, federal government agencies, EPA, FBI, HUD, organizations like that. We do live in a challenging time where a lot of that data is being deleted. So, like some of those watering holes that I used to go to collect information for, like, is no longer there. Creating the visualizations is without a doubt like the longest probably part of creating the articles, and followed closely by number two, which is personal stories connected to the data. I think another big thing that I realize in this work is that we often forget that there are very real people behind these very real numbers. And so I try to always link the data to stories of people who are kind of like struggling with those issues. So creating the visualizations and then finding the stories is definitely time consuming. But it does create these nice anchor points for all of the articles. So every single piece I publish like kind of has that county level map. And I try and also always produce like a map that has that smaller level of detail, right? I think state level often masks a lot of inequalities that are happening in the US. Like what's going on in the northern part of Texas is really different than what's going on in the southern part of Texas, like right along the, border with Mexico. I live in Brooklyn, like even what's happening in, the southern part of, New York State, in the city is very different, than what's happening in the, northern parts closer to Canada. And so trying to break out a lot of those regional differences is quite important. And then the other 10%, like sometimes I'll build these like fancy web scrapers to find, data and pull things out. But a lot of the time, yeah, is just finding things. And then often people will send me interesting data sets and be like, can you make a cool map of this? And that's often fun to do.
Mm. And I see often that you're going here with Data Wrapper, right? This is one of the tools you're using to create these visuals then?
Yeah, that's the main tool that I use. Flourish is another one. Like we have this kind of sub series in American Inequality called The Dividing Line, where
Mhm.
we'll just produce kind of interactive visualizations for folks. I love Data Wrapper. I've been accused in the past of like being an ad for Data Wrapper because of like how much I talk about it. I also teach a class called Analytics for Social Impact, where I like train up people on how to use Data Wrapper. I think it's a fantastic free, like nice drag and drop tool. You then get this like nice little URL afterwards that people can use to kind of, dig in and zoom into different areas or send around to folks. But yeah, Data Wrapper is primarily the thing that I use to help, visualize this. And it just also like often embeds well into Substack. And similarly with Medium, because I kind of started writing there, you can like drop the URL in there directly and it's nice.
Mm. And if we would like to get access to this like course, then we would have to be your students, right? It's not
Yeah,
like available online.
I've toyed with like trying to do an online version of the class actually, which, Christine, I know you do so many great online classes too. Like you give me inspiration to, work
Oh,
on some of those. And I think now that I have the book done, like maybe I'll work on one of those because I do think like I am such a big believer in open source and trying to like train up folks on some of these skills. And so it's definitely something that I've been kicking around. So if
mm.
people in the
Yeah, I
chat are
think if you
interested in
love
this, yeah,
visualization, then definitely you could become an online course instructor and you are already a professor, you know. Who else should do this? It's in your
yeah,
DNA. It's your writer thumbprint somehow, you know. And yeah, we're gonna dig a bit deeper into writer thumbprint as I want to talk with you about like the actual book deal and writing this and then publishing this as well. But one aspect I think is very important. You being a professor. um, we had already someone, Ryan Hennessy. He used to be like a teacher, and he said, for instance, that everyone was like somehow he felt like as if anyone would be watching what he would be doing. You were a professor. Let's say this is on another layer than being a professor to being like just like a teacher, maybe. How do you feel about these two worlds? Because on the one hand you are a professor and you have your students, and then on the other hand you are this super successful Substack newsletter writer, and in addition you're going to be this author. How do you, as a mom, you always get asked, how do you juggle all these identities? I hate the word juggle, but you know what I mean. Like, how do you how do you do this all? How does all this fit into this writer thumbprint, into your like DNA there?
Yes, I'm a dad as well. My son will be 2 in
Yeah, also
August.
you're
So
a parent.
yeah,
Yes.
so many things to, yeah, balance, juggle as well. Um, yeah, the teaching thing I love a lot, mainly for like Q&A and pushback from students, like that active conversation, the debate that happens in classroom is, terrific. Um, and being able, kind of in this same mentality of like, online course or open source, like being able to feel like I'm helping to train up this, next generation of leaders and thinkers and people who are going to go into, companies or, policy organizations or into government to lead change is incredibly important to me. Um, my challenge with teaching, though, is that it doesn't always have the doing. Like, I enjoy doing the teaching thing on the side. I think it's hard for me to think about doing that as like my main part of life because I think it's also a thing that's sometimes hard for me with the writing is like enjoy being out in the world, kind of doing this. And that was also like quite a nice part about the book as well. Like was visiting these communities, talking with people, understanding what solutions could or could not work. Um, but yeah, at some point I plan to go back into government. Like I loved working in government, and so we'll definitely like head back that way to be doing more of that, government work. But I do feel like there's certain parallels between academia and government of like working through big ideas, research, like, that type of collaboration that you need to do. Um, and so it's been great so far. Yeah.
Mm. And your students and the other professors, how did they react to your Substack newsletter and now also to your book deal?
It's funny. I don't talk about the Substack too much in class. It just, I don't know. It doesn't like,
You don't
I
have
think
like a little business card or something?
I
You
think
some
it's in
or
some ways it's
guerrilla
like,
marketing, like stickers everywhere on the campus, so like
yeah, in some ways I feel like students sometimes think they're like too cool for school in some ways, so they, like, don't wanna follow like, I'll mention that I do this writing and research, but whether it's Substack or not, I don't know, I sometimes go back and forth about it, and I don't know, they're not, like, I don't know, sometimes some students will read or other students who have Substacks will kind of tune in, um, but the book is also, I think, a nice proof point, I think, for folks, and I think for a lot of, like, students who are very much so in the academic mindset, like, they like to think about what that journey could be like for them. They're obviously writing a lot, producing a lot of papers, and so thinking about, like and seeing that possible journey between connecting the dots of where they are and where they could be is quite nice, and writing a book is also such a journey. There's so many different parts to juggle. And so I often, like during office hours, will have students come in to say, like, if I did want to write a book, what are the things I need to know? What's the process? Because, yeah, I didn't know a lot from the outside. And then once you're on the inside, you now have all of this specialized knowledge that I think is very worth sharing.
Mm. Yeah, and you somehow like built this part-time Substack similar to me, and now you have this book deal. This is of course just like something where we would like the story, we would zoom out and we would talk about this. But now I would say let's zoom in a bit so that we get a better feeling for what actually happened. So when was like the moment, or in 2021 when you started, were you already thinking about the book? Were your vision to become this published book author? Was this the intention of your Substack? And or when was the point you said, you know what, I'm gonna take all these, what you said, like I was sitting on maps on all the data sets. I had all of these. When did you say, I want to take all of them and you know put them, compile them and put them into a book?
Yeah. So strangely enough, I was not planning to write a book. Like when I started the Substack, I did not intend for it to turn into a book deal. And I had always thought it would be cool to write a book, but I was like, that's something that'll happen when I'm like 65, towards the end of my career, when I have more, time and not,
Yep.
raising this, 2-year old. Um, but one of my very good friends from college mentioned my Substack to both his editor and agent. He was working on a book at the time and actually just came out with his second book last week. It's called How to Not Know. And he also talks about my old team at the Fed in the book. It's a terrific book. Um, and I like spoke with his agent and kind of, thought about what a, kind of book could look like based off of a few things I was working on at the time. And the agent, his name is Dan Greenberg, he was like, this is great. Let's do it. Spent the next, few months like working on a proposal. 3 months later, we were kind of like shipping the proposal in front of, Hachette and, Penguin and Norton. And yeah, got a great, offer in advance from Hachette. And yeah, we went with it and then spent the next, yeah, year and a half kind of traveling around the country, visiting a lot of these communities, kind of building out the book. I saw there was also like the question in the chat about balancing, writing of the book and keeping a regular Substack. It was really, yeah, hard to do as I'm like trying to work on this proposal, figure out what, works in book world, but also trying to keep that strong relationship with my audience, like that trust that you built, that regular cadence and rhythm. Because I also knew the Substack would help reinforce like the book writing and eventually the book launch and all of that.
Hmm. Yeah, this is interesting. And when was this point in time when this happened with your
Yeah,
friend?
this was 2024. I think
Mm,
like in February of 2024 was when
mhm.
I kind of had like signed with Dan. And then I signed my book deal in July of 2024 because my son was born in August.
Oh,
Um,
sweet.
yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, super. So it was February 2024 when you signed or when Dan became your agent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as you said, you were like pitching this, you were writing the proposal, and then I think in July from February to July, this is amazing. So quickly you got this amazing book deal with this top 5 publisher, which is incredible. Um do you have any tips for when it comes to the proposal for us? Any tips for everyone listening right now?
Yeah. So I is it helpful to just talk about like what a proposal is or just like tips about like what
Just
makes the
short about the proposal and then more like the action steps. Yeah.
sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Just maybe super brief, like what is a proposal for everyone who has no clue, but then more like, okay, what to put in the proposal, what did you put in the proposal, and what would be your advice for them?
Yeah, so a proposal is basically a 50-page document that outlines what your book is going to be, why you are the person to write it, what's your, kind of like channel or platform for getting it out there, and then basically a quick summary of what all the chapters of the book are going to look like. So kind of those are the four big components of that 50-page doc, and that's then what I shipped around to kind of all of these publishers. I think what I realized is like the original proposal that I had created with Dan was not what I ended up shipping around because sort of what I had written up was something more around life expectancy. Like that had been kind of the thing that had launched my Substack kind of into this new tier and really accelerated that growth of, writing for just like a few, 200 friends and family into really getting to this, much higher point. And kind of when I presented that to Dan, he was like, people know about this. Like people have been, we've been writing about, deaths of despair with, Anne Case and Angus Deaton for a long time. Like, you wrote this big thing about life expectancy. People are aware of it. Like we need something new, something novel, something that when you put it out in the world will be unexpected, will be exciting, will kind of be this new thing that when it hits the shelves, people will like be able to, there'll be a bunch of articles that people can write about it and all of that. I think that was kind of this nice aha moment for me too, which is I think a few people have sort of asked about like the difference between book versus, Substack in the chat. I have really tried to keep the content that will be in the book as not out on the internet. So that way when the book comes out in the world, like it'll be the first time people are hearing these stories, understanding some of these stats, like seeing that, and in some ways trying to not like cannibalize the books. And also so
Mm.
that when the book comes out, people are like, I need to read this. And so when I rewrote the second proposal, it was more in that. Like, what are these novel things that people don't know, haven't heard about? And I think that was something that then really resonated when I, sent it around to these publishers, where they were like, wow, I didn't know about this. This is cool. This is exciting. This is this new way of thinking. And I think that's sort of what helped make for that more successful proposal when I pitched it.
Mm. Yeah, I love this. So really like this original piece and also like what you said, new, unexpected, and yeah, I think let's say if you put it out, I could imagine that then suddenly with the help of AI there are gonna be, lots of people maybe sharing similar stuff or so. This is just how it goes at the moment. But I love that you said that people have to scream like or to say to themselves, I need this, I need to read this book. And I think especially in your niche with your data, very specific data, you can really create this very unique and original pitch, which I love. And this was then the one which you also sent, like let's say just like via email to this big publisher, and then you one of the top five then said, "Yes, Jeremy, we're gonna do this with you." Or how did this happen then?
Yeah, so once I kind of worked on that, my agent, that 50-page document, he then
Yeah,
shared it around kind of with all of these
yeah,
publishers because I think for me, right, I sort of knew I wanted to go the once I decided I was going to write a book, I knew I wanted to go the agent route and kind of do the big publishing thing instead of self-publishing. And he is the one who kind of had all the contacts at these kind of big publishing houses, and they also all have separate imprints that kind of like specialize in different things of like, is your book a big ideas book? Is your book a economics book? Is it a policy book? Is it a politics book? And how we then positioned it, with those different imprints helped like resonate more or less with some folks. I really didn't want to position my book as a politics book because it is not. It kind of like goes beyond that in some ways. Like some of the solutions we talk about in the book are very private sector driven. Some are more policy. Some are, kind of, leaning left or leaning right. But it's really at its core a book about like solutions too. So we also didn't want to like frame it as a book on like inequality or poverty because I think we get a lot of that already in just the regular news. And so something that
mm,
proposes more answers, I think was also like how we then, sent it out. Like Dan puts a little, kind of paragraph above that 50-page PDF to sort of help position it with these folks. And then we had interviews with a few that seemed interested in moving ahead. And then, yeah, signed the kind of contract and got the advance after that.
amazing. And what is then the category of this book? Is it like
Yeah,
culture or what is it?
Yeah, I would put it in kind of like the economics and policy
Economics.
kind of
Mm,
category. Like I think if you went into a bookstore, you would sort of see it in the like economics
yeah.
category, or I think in like the big ideas
Hmm.
category, kind of
Big
because it
ideas.
presents this sort of new method of problem solving, trying to look to local communities that are similar, that have kind of figured out how to address the problem that your community might be struggling with.
Mm. And I think this proposal, 50-page proposal, this is huge, I think. So I guess somehow you had already like just within a few weeks or so put all your ideas into this proposal, right? And then later, yeah, later say flesh it out on the
Yeah,
page.
right, and so that's, that back part where you kind of you have like, a few, maybe 2 or 3 pages on what each chapter is going to be, like both kind of a little vignette of what the actual chapter will sound like, what your voice will be, and then where you
Mm,
intend to go. But also in that part, I think in, kind of area 3 of like platform, that's where I talked a lot about my Substack. I was like, I have this many subscribers, right? They open the emails at very high rates. They, leave all these comments. There are all these other big, writers who follow me and have kind of like encouraged me and all of that stuff. And so that part of the proposal, like of those four categories, having the Substack, I think was really valuable for me to say, like, I already have this built in audience that I think will be quite interested in the book. And that should be one of these ways to help like accelerate this because I think for the publisher's perspective, like they're interested in the story, but it's also a financial risk for them, right? Like they, kind of give
Mhm.
you this, like nice six-figure advance, but they want to make sure that that money is going to come back to them and more. And so, like, how can you prove to them that you can move the book, that you can make sales, that you can kind of get some return for them? Because, like, you could have the best idea, but if they think it's just going to sit on shelves, they might not, invest in it. Like they're a business too.
Mm. Yeah, I think this is amazing that you could persuade them that your book it would be worth birthing this book, which you're gonna do then next year in February, right? February 2027?
March
March,
16th
in
is the
March.
public.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's spring.
yeah,
It's gonna be in spring quarter 1, which
yeah.
is incredible. And okay, so you met them and via Zoom, I guess. Then you started talking, and then they said, thumbs up, Jeremy, you can start writing this. You just have to sign the contract. Cool. And
Yes.
then after yeah, and the point when you wrote the proposal in 2024, how many subscribers did you have back then? So
I had 12,000, I think, around that
12,000.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is very important because many think you have to have 50,000 or so, but 10,000 is impressive.
Yeah.
There are so many, for instance, also in Germany. In Germany, it's a Spiegel bestseller. This is similar to New York Times bestseller. And
Mm.
whenever I'm talking with them, they're going to tell me, oh, Christina, on Facebook, I have 500,000 followers. And then I'm asking them about their subscribers. And then they're going to tell me, yeah, well, I have 1,000 subscribers or so. I'm like, what? Yeah, you have to, you have to convert them. They have to become your subscribers. They don't get it. So I love that you said, hey, I feel confident with 12,000, which is, of course, impressive. There's another story. There's, for instance, Colette Fair. She's also on Substack. We met last year, 2025. She's published now with Penguin Random House. And when we met, she told me, Christina, my publisher told me I need to get on Substack. I also need to get on a TEDx stage. I don't know whether you gonna do like also like
I
speaking
yeah,
activities.
I did a
You did,
TEDx talk probably in 2023 now. But yeah, we'll
yeah.
continue to do more speaking things.
Maybe you're gonna do more of this.
Yeah.
These were like the two recommendations, and so she really started from rock bottom. I think she now has 5,000 or so subscribers, and she is now on this big like first pre-launch and now launch tour with her book, and yeah, working pretty well with Penguin Random House, which is incredible, of course. And yeah, so I love the idea. So no matter where you are, you can really start from rock bottom and build this email list. And again, also already it depends on your niche. 2,000 subscribers or so can be it, and then you can write this proposal. Okay, and then you started writing it, and I think the first thing you needed to do for them is the TOC or so to give them like an overview of what you would or was this something you put already in the proposal, or where did you start from there?
Yeah. So on the, after I kind of sent them the proposal and they sent back kind of, the contract, I think one of, besides the like, financial side of thing, another thing that I negotiated was how long I was going to take to write the book. I think back to, the point about like juggling many
Yeah.
different things. I think for this type of, book and topic, it's usually like 12 to 18 months. And for me,
Mm.
I was like, I definitely want 18 months.
Yeah.
I think between like teaching and newborn on the way and trying
Yeah.
to keep up with the Substack and day job, like it was just a lot of, things. I'd also committed in the proposal to basically travel across the US and going to a lot of different places in order to like collect
Yeah.
stories, so going down into coal mines in West
Horns, yeah.
Virginia and talking with, farmers in Mississippi and, going to Native American reservations in South Dakota, like
Wow.
places that are really difficult to get to and also really difficult to build trust with the community as an outsider. And so like I knew that was also going to take a long time to do. And so being able to like negotiate to say like I want to, deliver this in 18 months was sort of another thing that we set up. Um, and kind of in that time, like as we're kind of going through that contract negotiation, that's also when I'm starting to do, more research, more interviews. So I did over 200 interviews, for the book as well. And so finding people who wanted to be those core stories that were well, representative of the area or, kind of had those like powerful narratives was also like where I spent a lot of time in the beginning.
Well, this is crazy. So, but I think at the same time, it's amazing that you could do all this research. You could talk to people you would never ever have talked with. But you could say, you know what, I'm writing this book, and you could somehow, or your stories could be included in the book somehow, which is, of course, an amazing thing for you to happen, and also the people you interviewed, I think. And so I have the feeling this was then also like a living, breathing thing, really, this book. But 18 months, how did you structure this? Because I think 18 months, this is a lot. There are some, also when it comes to book ideas with Penguin or so, who told me, Veronica, for instance, Yorka Smith, I think she, for instance, she pitched via LinkedIn, and she had just the idea, and then she said, you know what, we're like playing some type of ping pong, like Penguin Random House, they had this idea, Veronica said this and that, and then it was ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, and then they had the idea of the anti-procrastinator, and this was the idea, and then she went with Penguin to write this, and I think she had only like 3 months or so to write this book. Oh,
Wow.
I don't want to lie. I think 3 to 6 months or so, which I thought,
Yeah.
oh my, oh my. I think it were 3 months or so. So there are lots of publishers who say now, hey, you know what? Can you write this in 3 months? Of course, when it comes to AI, I totally get this. But when it comes to something like anti-procrastinating or so, only 3 months, and also with 2 kids in the house, it's complicated. Let's go like this. But for you, with these 18 months, this is like somehow like it's a sprint, not really a sprint. It's more like a marathon or a sprint, both together.
Yeah.
How did you feel about this, and how did you structure this time? Did you
Yeah. So
go from chapter 1 to chapter, I don't know how many chapters this has, 23, or how did you do it?
Yeah, so for me, what really helped is I had a really set structure going into this that helped guide a lot of the, writing over the period. So there are basically these five counties that define the entire book. So the county with the worst housing insecurity, with the worst healthcare outcomes, worst educational outcomes, lowest, or highest unemployment rate and lowest incomes in the US. And so that, kind of like five these places, every, kind of place has a really, kind of like one single character you kind of move with, through that whole chapter. And so that's kind of gave me a lot of, anchor points to work on. It was also really nice, the chapters like talk to each other and sort of have these, kind of overarching themes about America and inequality and opportunity, but also they're separate. And so when I got stuck, like I was like, I just don't know how to make progress here in Mississippi. Like I could jump to West Virginia and start, kind of working there. I also just kept a really strict, kind of like rhythm and work process every day. Uh, because someone very early on made the point to me. They were like, if you write a page every single day, you can write a 300-page book in 10 months. And they're like, not every page is going, 8 to 10 months, right? Like, and they're like, not every page is going to make it into the book, but like, if you write a page a day, you're going to make great progress. And so that's what I kept myself to. I wrote a page every single day, basically for, a little over a year. And sometimes when I was writing a page, I was like, I know this page is so bad and is not going to make it into the book. But I think just building that muscle memory, that brain memory, very much so like helped through that process. Um, and also times whenever I would feel stuck, interviews were great. So I really relied a lot on like, and finding interviews was like great and fun and a real skill I built out through this. School directories are like usually a great place to start because you can find like phone numbers of teachers and principals and things like that. Churches as well. Like I talked to a lot of pastors across the US, and like they would then introduce me to other people. They're so well connected into their communities. Um, and so having those five counties, keeping the really strong rhythm of like, sitting in my chair, every single day in the morning from like, this amount of time helped me continue to move forward, and the interviews to then like prompt new thinking about a new story or kind of angle or place that I had maybe missed.
Yeah, and the manuscript length is 95,097 words, which I think um, is quite impressive. And you delivered this here April 19, which is just, let's say, a few days. Yeah, it's a month back, but you know what? Yeah, a month back. It's
Yeah.
exactly a month back. And yeah, this is so, yeah, wonderful. Now, 4 weeks somehow after sending this manuscript. And have you gotten any feedback? Or let's go back one more step. When did you, through this process, these 18 months, did you have to send them a draft, or like give them access to a chapter already so they could see whether this is what they wanted or not? Or how was this going with the editors from Hachette?
Yeah, so I would send basically 2 chapters at a time over and kinda get edits back, throughout. The most kind of close in touch I was with my editor was around the introduction that really helped, like,
Mm,
frame the core ideas about the book, where we were heading, where I kinda built that initial trust with the reader into, like, making sure that the introduction was just kick ass and like gripped you from the very first sentence. And that opening paragraph was, kind of really top notch. So spent a lot of really close hand holding with my editor there. And then, yeah, we would do 2 chapters at a time and we'll kind of get feedback for there. And then I also brought in like, external folks to help edit. So some like friends that, I sent the book along to because right again when the book goes out into the world, I don't want it to be like the only other person who has seen it is my editor, so got feedback from them, my family as well. So I actually had 13 different people edit my book, which in hindsight was too
well,
many. I would not recommend that to people. I also hired like fact check. So kind of once I kind of finished that writing process, got all my content, then went largely through the editing process, then the fact checking process, and then it was kind of all done from there.
yeah, I think fact checking is very important when it comes to, this. Okay, cool. And now there is this manuscript. And did you get already like some feedback? Have they like, what are the next steps now for you? We have like, what do we have, like May 2026?
Yeah, I've gotten some really positive feedback already from Hachette. They've sort of shared that they, plan for it to be one of their, top titles next year. So, will be great, to try and get, some more like publishing and marketing support there. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of, kind of since I, shared like my Substack post, which I also, dropped into the chat and on LinkedIn and your work, like got a lot of really positive, messages from folks and inbound about people who want to do, podcasts or, write up the book when it comes out or, offering to do reviews and things like that, which has been great. And so now I'm kind of in the zone of designing the cover. So I'd sent along some like visualization, inspiration to Hachette. Also trying to think about like avenues of places that might be interested in buying the, book in bulk, speaking places, journalists that, kind of like operate in the same space. So like now that content is done, it's kind of into this next, book machine phase of like, how do you actually get it out into the world?
Cool. So you are now somehow putting on the marketing hat as well, because
Yeah,
I think with the guest post, you somehow start this whole thing. I think it's super smart going with a podcast. So, for instance, Colette, she was also, I think, she was booked in 25 or even 50 podcasts or so, which was. I have no clue how she did this, and now I see her constantly on LinkedIn and on Substack that she's sharing like behind the scenes when she's somewhere on TV. And I think with you this would be similar then, right? Podcast, TV, also speaking on stage, and I think the heartbeat of this whole thing would be your Substack, right? So this would be the idea for you as well.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely planning for the Substack to be kind of a big part of it and sharing a lot with, kind of readers there, yeah, behind the scenes process. There's also like so much that ended up on the cutting room floor, all of these like incredibly powerful stories of people and places. And so the Substack will also be a nice channel for people to like, the book will have kind of these great core stories, but people who want to see some of these other really strong narratives, like that'll be a really fun place to be sharing it there too. And podcasts as well have been the kind of like other big thing that I hear in the publishing world, where they're like, Substack is a great way, podcasts are great, but sometimes like the traditional media, like channels that we've had don't always move, books in ways that they, thought to in the past. And so, yeah, we'll definitely be doing the like podcast circuit as well.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what all the tools gonna be. But I think like the biggest one is really Substack, and I also love that you're somehow like, although the book isn't published yet, it's gonna be out in March, but you're now already like preparing like the pre-launch runway for the book, because I guess you now start sharing these narratives, right? Or will you wait? Will it be part of the, or later, like in 2027, or can you now share or start already sharing these narratives, or would they, I don't know, reveal too much or?
I think I'll probably start sharing them soon. I think now I want to like create that plan from like today until, March 16th of 2027, like over these next 10 months, what does that, kind of roadmap look like to book launch? Because, pre-sales will start, 4 or 5 months beforehand. And so that will obviously be a big time to like start engaging people about the book. But how do you like continue to like sustain that momentum over that period is kind of tricky. And so I want to think about how to stage some of those things. But I think those, yes, stories and articles will be important. And then I'll kind of continue with sort of just the regular, posting on the Substack as well of different topics. I'm working on, one now with another person on my team about like educational outcomes and like where housing is affordable, and so like living in people try and live in good school districts, but the homes might not be within your price range. Working on another one about like religion and inequality, another one about preventable hospital stays. So like topics that are like kind of orbit around the book but aren't specifically like drawn from that cutting room floor.
Mm. Oh, I think this is smart. And a question about the content. I know the word is, yeah, there is no better word for content, but the actual stories or the chapters in the book. Did you also take pieces from your Substack and somehow repurpose them? Or did you saw from your Substack what would be working pretty well and then you knew what to put into the book? Because there are some, for instance, they are serializing their books on Substack. Others, they are, you know what I mean, like just putting all these pieces together, whatever, like when it's about tech stuff or so, they're putting all these pieces together and they're going to say, you know what, these are the 24 most successful pieces. And I'm going to, for instance, indie publish them and then going to share this, something like this. So, what was the influence of your Substack newsletter
Yeah.
for the book?
I think the influence is more meta than actual content. Like, I think the main influence is that this connection between stories and data is really resonates with a lot of people. Like, if you have a story, but you like don't have kind of like hard stats to back it up, it sometimes like doesn't feel as grounded or as like impactful. And so a lot of that book is kind of moving between stories, data, these powerful, like randomized control trials that we know that actually create these powerful solutions. But all of the content in the book is net new. Like the stories of the people, the places that I profile are not things that I've kind of covered in the Substack before. And that is by design. Like they've kind of been all areas, that will be new. I've like touched on some of them a bit, like counties with, like I've written a handful of things about housing insecurity in the US. And so those places will come up on life expectancy. But the stories of like the, preschool teachers or the pastors, or like the, homeless mother that I spent a lot of time with, like all of those will be new stories that people have not seen before.
Mm. Yeah, and I loved for the guest post, how to become a published author with Substack and increase your surface of luck. You were talking about like this putting yourself in a position of luck. And I always tell people, yeah, you can put yourself in a position of luck if you just start writing on Substack, no matter where you're coming from, whether you are interested in gardening and you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to share my gardening wisdom with you, or whether it's about parenting and you're going to say, hey, yelling doesn't help or whatever, what I mean? Or
Yeah.
you're interested in sports and you're going to say, hey, I'm running with, other people, whatever, like on a weekly basis, and I'm gonna share my insights, or whether it's something with corporate or your memoirs or whatever it is. No matter where you're coming from, no matter what your niche is, we also talked about this yeah. The, also your subscriber list can be teeny tiny, doesn't matter if you're, for instance, in a super super small niche just, and the publisher is also going to say, yeah, what, you have 2,000 subscribers, it's impressive because you're writing about I don't know what, like, you would be interested, very, very specific, whatever, like rhododendron, for instance, just about rhododendron. And then you bring 2,000 people from all around the world together who are interested in rhododendron, as an example, when it comes to gardening. And so I think this is really interesting when it comes to you. You also talked about like being this professor and then loving as well to showing people how to take action and maybe see, as you shared, In America, you could maybe move whatever, where from Florida to somewhere else because there it might be better to live, whatever. I loved it. And also bringing people all these insights, visualizing the data because also somehow I'm a data driven marketeer, but at the same time, yeah, I also love it if I can give it to someone and then he's visualizing the data for me. I'm not someone who, you know what I mean, like who who loves to read, go through all this statistics and stuff. I really am the visual kind of person who needs this visualization, and you're doing exactly this. And I think what you touched on in the beginning was this being original, sharing something unexpected, sharing something new, and maybe this could be like one of the things. It's one of the last questions here when we're thinking about exactly this new, unexpected, original, and something that can't be cannibalized. How hard is it, in the age of AI to create something like this? I know with you, we talked about this is very specific with the data and stuff, but for everyone else, do you have like a advice for us, a recommendation for us, what we could do to put ourselves in the position of luck also when it comes to originality, which is going to be super important?
Yeah, I think for me, what I tried to, think about back then and what I still think about is like what is my like comparative advantage not only for other writers, but now I also think about it for AI, and like AI is still very bad at creating data visualizations. Like
Mm.
you even if you drop in a very large data set, like it is quite scrambled. It's not that great. There are now some more tools that are getting, better at it. But I was like, I am someone who can help, translate between data, policy, economics, and stories. And like I live in the middle of like those 4 points. And so thinking about like what is that area that you like, what are those intersections that you live between? Because I think AI can be great at things like, all that you might see these authors who, are professors who are PhDs and specialize in these things, but like where are those areas of overlap that you sit in? But I also think like it is really important for us to talk about luck in this. Like there is this like very, clear through line that we trace, but also like a lot of it has these like variation in that where I experimented with different things at different times. And like it only took me a while to like realize that people really like maps and not charts, like all of these other things. And so I think that ability to like not only think about what your comparative advantage is, but also start experimenting and seeing like what also resonates with people, because I think that's where you start connecting with these other great, not only like audiences, but authors and folks, and like, have some of these little pops of inspiration where then somebody sends you this other thing. And so that was like, I didn't even know about Data Wrapper until I started making all these maps and somebody else sent it to me and then got to be able to like, create all these cool interactive tools. And so I think the combination of those two things can be something that can help you not only like find your voice, but also find really great writing that connects with others.
Mm. And what I also learned in this podcast episode is we started talking about community and whether somehow Substack was a platform to join because of the community. We also talked that when you started in 2021, Substack wasn't the place it is now when it comes to community. But also community, when you, for instance, were interviewing these people, was very important for you because all these network effects helped you. And this is the same with Substack. And we both, I said, I'm going to start this spring guest posts series again. And you said, hey, you know what, Christine, I have something for you. And I was so excited when you reached out to me. What do you think about the network effects on Substack, and what do you think about guest postings now moving forward? You talked about the marketing plan and everything. How important is this? Is this gonna be with
Yeah.
collabs?
It's hard for me to say, like, I'm sort of in the zone with guest posts where it's nice for me to meet cool people. Like, I was excited to do it with you because I really admire your work and how incredibly, like, helpful you are to others on Substack. Like, I find that, I don't know, a lot of Substack can also feel very self-promotional. Like, it's a lot of writers who have been kind of, like, in these big newsrooms for a while, and that part is what it is. Like, it's not, LinkedIn, of course. Um but those writers who like give a lot are very much so still, prominent on the platform. And so I think that is nice. Um, And guest posts are also cool where, like, again, to this point of like areas of overlap, like what do you bring to, the table that others might not? And as a person who like believes so much in open source data, I also wanted to like be an open source publisher in some ways because so much of this is behind the scenes. I think a lot of people don't know about proposals or this 50-page document or how to get an agent or how to, kind of pitch a big publishing house. And so sharing more of that, I think helps democratizes, information, which is also a big part of like the Substack in general is like, we make all of the maps and the data available for people to download and do whatever they want with. And so guest posting also makes that other nice way to continue to, work with folks. And I also like doing the Substack lives for that same type of reason, for connecting with new audiences, like bringing people together across either similar or disparate ideas. And then, like I think when the book comes out, it's like being able to continue to like evolve that conversation with these folks to say like, hey, remember when, Christina and I talked like in the early days of just finishing my book? Like here, now you can like see this broader part of Jeremy's, journey on this thing. Um, and so I think that's also a nice way to just like give people these anchor points across different areas of Substack.
Yeah, and I love that you showed us how we can connect all these dots, and all these dots somehow lead to the point where you are now, that you're gonna be this debut author in March 2027, which is incredible. And everyone who has now fallen in love with you since you were so incredible and so smart, and you are a visualization genius, do you have some kind of book club, or do you have an ambassador book club or something like this? Is there anything how we can already like connect with you and the book? Do you have something like this, or is it just your newsletter to connect with?
Yeah, right now it's just the newsletter, and using that in the last, kind of post that I had on, the book being done. There was like a Google form in there too. That's where I sort of, there's like a few hundred folks in that where I've been sending more like dedicated updates. And people can also put questions in there about topics that they wanted to hear about. And so there were like 15 people who had kind of responded in the last week saying they wanted more behind the scenes about the book publishing process. And so those 15 emails, I emailed them like yesterday morning saying, hey, I'm doing this event with Christina, today you guys might want to come check it out. And so I'm also like trying to break that up into like subgroups too to create some of that dedicated connection because I think as this Substack has grown into the tens of thousands, like those smaller communities are really still
Yeah.
fun to talk with people and kind of build those more intimate connections.
Mm. Yeah, just can tell you with the book clubs, I think this is a nice idea because I don't know, maybe you want to have like 20 people or 50 people or so, maybe helping you when it comes to reviews and stuff, depending on the pre-launch runway you have with Hachette. And the same as I'm, for instance, now part of from a bigger, yeah, very famous, not really author, but marketing expert. And I'm there in the Ambassador Book Club. This is something that he's doing, which I think is super smart. This is on LinkedIn as an example. And so you then connected with other professionals. I just started on LinkedIn. I'm not really using LinkedIn, maybe on a weekly basis or so, but starting this flywheel. But there are others who have, I don't know what, 100,000 followers or so. And they are also in this group, which is, of course, amazing. So I don't know, for you, for your topics, maybe you can also start something like this. But I guess Hachette, they're going to tell you exactly what they want for the marketing. But I just wanted to tell you that these book clubs and also these ambassador book clubs, where let's say, yeah, it's on another level because there are other professionals coming together, people who are not just interested in the topic, but who are also experts in this topic. And this could be something for you as well, because I'm seeing this now more often. And this really helps when it comes to becoming number one and new releases or whatever the goal is for Hachette. So maybe this is also something to think about. And all the, of course, all the community features on Substack, of course, they help everything you can do to grow your audience. What would be the goal then with your Substack newsletter? Let's say we would talk next year in March when you're gonna launch the book. Where would you where would you like to be with your subscriber count?
I don't know necessarily about a number. I mean, the Substack is like more or less like, I mean, depending, I think it's doubled in the last 2 years or
Yeah.
so. Obviously as you get bigger, it kind of gets harder to do that. Um, but yeah, I think it's still just like continuing to get this strong community, like connecting with a lot of readers who are like really interested in the topic. In some ways, like the number is nice, but it's also part of like how committed are those readers? How much do they like care? Like you could get a lot of folks who just sign up and don't actually open or engage in
Yeah.
those types of things. And so I think some of it is like, quality over quantity. But I do think I want to try and get more and more folks on board who are like also very excited about the book because I think trying to like get on those big book lists and getting the book to like be, kind of out in the world because I think it carries this really important message about lessening inequality and promoting more opportunity. And that's the goal. Like the goal isn't numbers or people who like leave comments or open rates. Like it's about lessening inequality and trying to, help people get closer to achieving the American dream. And so that is like the goal. And I think the book contains a lot of those nuggets and solutions in it. And so I think that's kind of a core part for me and thinking about these as like ways to mobilize people and activate folks and then push forward really hard conversations and get people to think about communities or places in ways that they haven't already and like challenge your preconceptions about how you think America operates and how it ought to. Like I think that's really the goal for me.
Yeah, so I could imagine that you could hit whatever, like 30,000 subscribers or so, although you say it's not about the number. However, I think it's nice to have this reach as well, because the more you can reach, the better. And you also shared in the guest post with me that you said it was about also the open rate. So you could also tell Hachette, you know what, I have this and that open rate, and so and so many people, whatever, click a link or whatever. And so, yeah, you could really show like the behind the scenes. And maybe there's one more tip with Colette, for instance. She was also, oh, Christina, I'm not sure about whether people would be interested about the behind the scenes. What about my actual topic? Because the actual topic is about the cost of quiet, meaning that, yeah, you know what I mean? Like when it comes to great divorce and stuff, it's very important to talk. And if you stop talking or, you can't not communicate, something like this, yeah, I don't know, with every relationship, it's very important. Also, this conversation is changing my life. It might be changing your life because maybe with my ideas, you're like, oh, yeah, maybe I'm thinking now about a book club or so.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, I
And
learn
what
I
she
learn something new from you every time I read your work and chat with you.
Oh,
Um,
oh, this is wonderful. Yeah, yeah, with me, you know how it is with the Online Writing Club. In the Online Writing Club, we have multiple things to cover. So we have the newsletter stuff, we have the book publishing stuff, we have the stuff where we're going to say we want to become better writers, and of course, all the paid stuff. And yeah, I have like this umbrella brand somehow. I think with yours, it's more like niche and very specific. With me, it's broader, but I wanted this. This was built by intention or by design. But what I wanted to say with Colette was, what she did was she went with these behind the scenes, and this was exactly what people loved. You started doing this already on notes and stuff, but I think if you would do more of this, people would there would also be lots of people who are going to say, oh, I'm so excited about the book because Jeremy is sharing so much behind the scenes. And this is what Colette still does in the launch
right.
now, in the launch phase. And I think this is the best because you're seeing like what you're struggling with, maybe also with your kid at home, with your wife at home, because you have so many things. Professor, the kid, wife, I don't know, like, I don't know, date night, is date night a thing or not? Yeah.
Yes,
And
we went to
those
the
are,
Yankee game last night. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
oh, wow, you see, this is something that is incredible. And people are gonna say, wow, Jeremy, how do you do this? And so, Jeremy, I thank you so much. It was incredible. It was delightful. We saw so many questions in the comments, lots of people joining us today. If you want to connect with you now, because you didn't say exactly how we can connect. We know there is not a book club yet, but how could we connect with you, Jeremy?
Yeah, so the Substack, LinkedIn, I like, post a lot on there. You can find my like Columbia email address online on that, kind of site you had pulled up there too, if people want to just like email me directly with any questions. And yeah, that Google form as well that I mentioned kind of like in that chat. I'm sort of like creating more of that, more book process community in there too, because I think, yeah, thinking about how to like distribute some of this information. Like there's some people who are on the newsletter just for the like, inequality and opportunity topics, and some people who also want to see some of these other things. So thinking about like bifurcating a bit of that audience too. But yeah, I would love to like continue to stay in touch with folks and also helping, empower others who want to write books, who want to, understand a bit more about writing, who want to think about like increasing their surface of luck. I definitely don't have all the answers, but I have like a few little data points now that I'm happy to share.
Yeah, and I promise you, whenever I'm talking about book publishing on Substack now, I'm gonna refer to you and I'm gonna refer to Colette Fair. She's the one. Is there anyone else? Yeah, I think Veronica, the other person I mentioned, these are incredible, but there are also, of course, lots who going like the indie publishing route. For Jeremy to connect with, this would be American Inequality. This is the subdomain on Substack, so americaninequality.substack.com. This is very important. So, Jeremy, I wish you a wonderful day and thank you so much. And talk soon, my friend, okay? And also,
Absolutely.
please do me a favor and send me this link where people then can say, I would like to get more notifications on your book and stuff. So I
I
can
will.
put it in the show notes.
Perfect. Thanks so much for
Thank
having me,
you so
Christina.
much. Bye
Bye.
bye.